after his 13-year-old showed him a poster hanging on a classroom door, a poster listing sex acts.
The poster was hanging in a classroom in Hawker Grove Middle School in the Shawnee Mission School District. And Mark Ellis says if what it lists is part of the curriculum needs to change. And we do want to warn you, one parent found it objectionable, and you may too. Late last week, Mark Ellis's 13-year-old daughter showed him a picture of this poster.
Why would you put it in front of 13-year-old students?
He thought the poster, which lists things like oral sex and grinding, might have been a prank, until he contacted the school principal and was told it was a teaching material.
The poster that you reference is actually a part of our middle school health and science materials, and so it is a part of our district-approved curriculum. However, the item is meant to be part of a lesson, and so certainly as a standalone poster without the context of the teacher-led discussion, I could see that there might be some pause for concern.
But Ellis is now concerned that what's on this poster is being taught to his 13-year-old in school.
Who approved this? You know, this had to pass through enough hands that someone should have said, hey, wait a minute, these are 13-year-old kids.
District spokesperson Leanne Neal says the poster needs to be viewed in the context of a bigger curriculum, which she calls abstinence-based for students in middle school.
The curriculum is part of, it aligns with national standards around those topics, and it's a part of our curriculum in the school district.
But Ellis thinks if that's the case, the curriculum needs to change.
This has nothing to do with abstinence or sexual reproduction, actually, a lot of these things. I would like to see that this particular portion of this curriculum is removed from the school.
And if the curriculum doesn't change, Ellis plans to remove his daughter from the sexual education classes. We're told the poster has since been taken down. The district spokesperson says the main issue is that it should have never been left up after the lesson had ended. Ellis says he feels parents have a right to know what their children are learning, and he wants other parents to know that this is now part of the curriculum.
In kindergarten, that's right, along with snack time and nap time, some very young children may soon be learning about anatomy and reproduction. The Chicago public school system is considering starting sex ed in kindergarten instead of 5th grade. Good idea or not? The 5 co-hosts, Andrea Tantaros joins us. Nice to see you, Andrea.
Good to see you too, Greta.
All right, so what's up with this? What do you think about this?
What is the world coming to? I remember getting a health class in 8th grade and then 11th grade, but it was nothing like this, Greta. I mean, these are 5-year-old kids, and I would argue we're just raising our kids too quickly. But these are standards that any school could adopt. Chicago just chose to adopt them, so they could be coming to a school near you.
All right, now you can opt out of them if you want for your children, but you've got, I mean, I suppose there are a lot of parents, for better or for worse, who are not necessarily paying attention to what's going on in these classrooms. Does that mean fair? I mean, not every parent is attentive, so it's like this could slip through the cracks. It's not opting in, it's opting out.
That's right. Parents have the choice, but a lot of parents might not know this is going on. Look, it's a larger problem. There's a breakdown of the family. You know, we used to get this kind of education from our parents, from our churches, from our communities. And now there's a lot of kids who don't have that. And so the government is stepping in, which I think this is not the government's role to do this. And you know what, Greta? It's not very good when the government tries to start teaching values. They're not very good at it. Now, look, I realize with technology, it's hard to not to advocate for these kids, abstain. But I wonder, is abstinence part of this? I looked over the entire report and I didn't see any part of that.
Whose idea is this? I mean, is this the school district that's coming up with this, or the school, or the state, or the county? Who's coming up with this?
This is the city of Chicago. And Greta, what's really sad is the city of Chicago has bigger problems to deal with than sex ed. Right now, only 60% of Chicago high school students graduate. Only 6% graduate from college. And reading and math levels for 8th graders are at 20 and 21% respectively. So I would argue this school district has a lot of other priorities besides teaching kids about condoms, how to put on a condom, gender roles in society. One of the things they are teaching is bullying. I think that actually might be a smart lesson for some kids. But some of this other stuff, I was reading the report, Greta, it's been researched by the Kennedy School, NPR, the Kaiser Institute, a lot of libs getting their hands in your kids' education. I think it's really scary, particularly for 5-year-olds Greta, I called a friend of mine before the show. His 5-year-old was up. I said, what's she talking about right now? He said unicorns and dinosaurs. So it's the last magical stage of your life. I think we're corrupting our kids a little bit too soon.
Andrea, thank you, and congratulations on the big success of the 5 at 5.
Thank you so much,
Teaching
Greta.
10-year-olds the, quote, pleasures of sex. The folks at the International Planned Parenthood Federation apparently think that is a great idea. That group making the recommendation that's what we should teach our 10-year-olds in a new report titled Stand and Deliver. And by the way, they want that teaching to be mandatory. It is a suggestion that has critics calling Planned Parenthood a bunch of, quote, sex-obsessed adults. But is that fair? Joining me now, Fox News contributor and radio talk show host Monica Crowley. All right, Monica. This Planned Parenthood domestic won't comment on that because they say it's from our international branch and they're closed. We can't reach them right now. But they want this mandatory that we have not just sex ed for 10-year-olds, sex ed, but to teach them, quote, the pleasures of sex.
Right. There are plenty of times, and there's plenty of time in somebody's life to learn the pleasures of sex. A 10-year-old should not be taught that. And here we've got an international organization that clearly wants to dictate to the domestic Planned Parenthood organization to set these guidelines for public schools and organizations. They essentially want the government to put this in place to force the role of sex education onto schools and teachers and the rest, supplanting the parents. This is the parent's role, Megan. This is not the role of anybody else except a parent. If a parent deems that their 10-year-old is growing and starting puberty early and maturing early, then it should be the parent's responsibility and the parent's right to say, gee, maybe my child needs a little bit more education here in terms of the birds and the bees, which now seems like a very quaint notion, right?
Yes.
Birds and the bees. But to hand it off to bureaucrats, whether it's international or domestic bureaucrats or even your kid's teacher, is ludicrous to me. It is an absolute, I think, a total grabbing of control over what should remain in parents' hands.
You know, I asked our brain room to do some research on what 10-year-olds are learning right now in school, and you might be interested to know. This is what the average 10-year-old is learning in a 5th grade. Addition and subtraction of fractions, using dictionaries, reading aloud.
Yes.
The pleasures of sex.
Yeah,
That's what they want to add to the list?
What's wrong with that list? The last one.
Well, let me take the other side, because it's obviously, I mean, I called it ridiculous in the tease, which is clearly editorializing. But I mean, can't we agree on anything that 10-year-olds should not be taught the pleasures of sex in class? All right, but let me take the other side. People say teen pregnancy is now trickling down. There was a story last week of an 11-year-old who gave birth. And the argument is people like that, kids like that, need to be taught because their parents aren't teaching them about contraceptives and so on.
Again, individual responsibility. Parents, parental role models, even I would say religious leaders, if they make a moral judgment. I mean, I think the problem here is that you've got an organization, Planned Parenthood, that is very aggressive on sex education, very aggressive on pro-choice and pushing the abortion option onto people of all ages, frankly. You have them coming at this with a political agenda. And my fear is that it is actually removing the role of parents, and if parents aren't present, other kinds of moral leaders, religious leaders, Megan, that can actually put sex into a greater context for
kids. They don't want that.
Right?
This is the issue Planned Parenthood has. They say, in the study, they say fundamentalists and other religious groups, including the Catholic Church and others, have imposed tremendous barriers to young people obtaining information related to sex. And they say currently many religious teachings deny the pleasurable and positive aspects of sex. They want the church out of the business of sex education.
That's exactly the statement that I zoned in on when I read this piece, Megan, because they set aside for particular criticism the Catholic Church, they set aside Islam, the Muslim religion, and some others saying, oh, well, they're blocking our kids from understanding the pleasures of sex, not the dangers, not unwanted pregnancy, the pleasures of sex. That's what this emphasis is, and that's why it's so outrageous.
You can't even
because
drive
it's
a car
not done
until you're 16 years old.
It's so unbelievable, Megan, but this is, again, this is a very secular, progressive agenda. And I think parents in this country, around the world, should stand up and say, this is our responsibility, because what we want to do for our 10-year-olds, our 12-year-olds, our 16-year-olds, our 18-year-olds, for God's sakes, is to give them some context for sex, whether it's religious, moral, values, religious, you name it. Yeah. But that is not present in this agenda.
You know, we're going to stay on this. We're going to continue pushing the domestic Planned Parenthood for a statement on this. I mean, I think some people may think, all right, it's international, it's the Netherlands Minister for Development Corporation, this guy Bert Koenders, who is backing this. So let's find out how the domestic Planned Parenthood feels about this and whether they are as far out as this.
Well, why can't we just let kids be kids, at least when they're 5? Now we have sex ed in kindergarten. This week, hundreds of outraged parents showed up at a school board meeting in Helena, Montana, carrying signs upset about the school district's plans for a new sex ed curriculum. Again, starting with kids as young as 5, teaching them about the body parts, proper terms. Here's a few of them: penis, vagina, nipples, testicles. For a 5-year-old, and you move on to 1st grade, taught about same-sex love. 5th grade, we get options for sex, including anal penetration. That's a 10-year-old. Hey, what about concentrating on math, science, English? Leave the parents to handle those delicate issues of morality that should be taught at home. Or maybe you think this is age appropriate. We need to be teaching this. This is News and Views. I think you know where I'm coming from. Where are you coming from on this one? Call us, 1-877-TEL-HLN. You go to Facebook, take our poll. Are kids in kindergarten too young for sex ed? We'll get to those in just a minute. Joining us to talk about it, welcome Dr. Bruce Messinger, superintendent at the Helena School District, who's in favor of this. Kathy Aruz with us, former high school teacher, editorial director, publisher, Catalina Magazine. We'll see what Kathy has to say about this. And on the phone, a parent in the district, Brian Ackerman, has 3 young daughters. What, a 1st grader, 3rd grader? You're going to have a kindergartner next year. Brian, your reaction to think that your little girls might be taught this, especially your youngest, who's going to be a kindergartner soon?
You know, right now my reaction, Mike, is I guess it's the lack of somebody that stepped up and said the age appropriateness of this has been established by X, and X's qualifications are. More so right now it seems that the material has been introduced and the people that brought the curriculum together as a group decided, well, at this point it's age appropriate, and we really haven't seen where that age appropriateness comes from. You know, what's the impetus, what's the driving factor, who decides this, when did they decide it, and how did they decide it?
Right. Well, let's ask Dr. Bruce Messinger. Bruce, seems to be a big question here. Who's deciding age appropriateness? Did you have parents involved as you were putting together this curriculum?
Our process was that as a part of the revamping of the curriculum is that we looked at what we had in place presently, looked at our practices within the district, and we also looked at national guidelines, national health standards, looked at the guidelines for sexual education, which were developed by a diverse set of organizations, and also looked at the American Academy of Pediatrics advice they would give on what would be age or developmentally appropriate to be introduced to children at different stages from elementary through middle school and high school. So we took guidance from that, as well as committee members that were pretty representative. Some included parents, yes.
Okay, but no parents. These were parents that were already on the board?
Actually, no board member. The board members were not involved in the creation of it. These are staff members and other members of the community, and some of our staff members, of course, are parents. Okay, Brian, there was the answer for you. A lot of different sources. Is that good enough for you, or not specific enough?
Right now, it's not specific enough.
Okay.
I would like to see someone at some point step up and say, this is the group that established it. And as Dr. Messenger alluded to, you know, there was members of the community. With a community of 60,000 people, anytime you get a group of people together, you're going to have members of the community. That seems understandable. But part of the problem with the members of the community and the development of the curriculum is that they don't all support the curriculum holistically. The people that developed the 62-page document, of which 95%, if not 99% of it, is really, really good stuff. It's not something that we can attach 100% agreement with all of the committee members.
Brian, what's your biggest issue? What disturbs you the most? Is it to think your little 5-year-old is going to have to be naming some of those body parts I mentioned, uterus or nipple? Is it the thought of a 10-year-old being taught about different sexual options, including anal sex, or is it all of the above? You know,
there's 2 things that concern me most, and I know that's difficult to believe, but one is the fact that we don't have any implementation. You know, it starts by saying in the curriculum that people of the same gender can love each other. It doesn't immediately say that there is such thing as homosexual relationships, and that comes in later. But it seems understandable.
That comes in for 1st graders, let's say that, but go ahead.
It seems understandable that people of the same gender can love each other. I love my father, and my father loves me.
Right.
My daughters love their mother, and vice versa. But then it goes on to say, now we're going to tell you about homosexuality. So what seems as something that can be introduced as benignly as, you know, you love your dad and your dad loves you, then becomes, and here is the reality of it is there's gay relationships out there. And the first thing, the first objection I have is that there isn't any sort of implementation in place right now that says this is how we're going to teach this.
Gotcha.
And if you read further into the document, it starts talking about the involvement of objects in sex.
Right, that's a little bit later, 5th and 6th grade. I want to get Kathy Rue in on this, and then we got some phone calls lined up as well. Kathy, to me, I'm a father myself. I think 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds being introduced to this, to me, it's too young. Your thoughts?
But they did consult with pediatricians, so I usually, as a mother, I listen to my pediatrician, and if he says this is what you should be doing, these are the foods you should introduce, I introduce those foods. So if the pediatricians actually said these are the topics you should introduce, then you put that into a curriculum. So if parents were doing such a great job with sex education over the years, we would have a lot less problems with teen pregnancy and teen sexually transmitted diseases. This is a problem in the United States, and this school district is actually trying to do something about it. And they have consulted with pediatricians. And
you don't have a problem with any of it, Kathy?
Age appropriate to me.
You don't have a problem with any of it?
I don't. It sounds like no. It sounds like they're teaching body parts and things that are facts of life, and I feel much more comfortable with my daughter learning about this in a classroom than in the hallway from a boy talking about, you know, lies that have to do with sex
and that's
ed.
the way that
I mean, I'd rather be in a controlled environment.
When most people think of Planned Parenthood, they think of the babies it kills through abortion, or the mountains of birth control it dispenses. But another side to Planned Parenthood, which should be equally considered, is its obsession with sex. Sex toys, sex contests, sex balloons, penis-shaped balloons, penis cupcakes, vagina macaroons, vagina fruit roll-ups, giant vagina costumes. All of these things play a central role in Planned Parenthood's community activities. But what's truly shocking is how these perverts are allowed unfettered access to our children while raking in government cash to sell them unrestrained sex. Oh, Planned Parenthood will claim that what they teach kids is scientific and age-appropriate. But the fact of the matter is that age-appropriate is a standard concocted by Planned Parenthood itself so that it can sell pornography to kids as science. Why would they do this? Just as the goal of a drug dealer is to make drug addicts, Planned Parenthood's goal is to make sex addicts, and they follow the same business model. For instance, Planned Parenthood's gateway drug is masturbation. One of its primary resources for 10-year-olds is a book called It's Perfectly Normal, and it sells masturbation to kids with graphic images of naked boys and girls masturbating, men and women having sex, and even things like this, and this, and this. If a dirty old man showed these things to a 10-year-old kid in a park, he'd be arrested. But when Planned Parenthood shows them to kids in a classroom, it gets government money. But that's just the start. Once they get to high school, you know, right about the time that they hit puberty, Planned Parenthood tells vulnerable teens stimulating and intimate things about sex. Just look at what its website for teens says. The link to Our Bodies takes teens to a page that provides graphic displays of genitals and tells them about how pleasurable the clitoris is and how pleasurable breasts are to touch and massage. This section, on sex and masturbation, encourages boys and girls to masturbate and tries to dispel any embarrassment or hesitation in trying it. It also describes orgasms and encourages anal sex and oral sex. This section, titled LGBTQ, tells young teens that all sexual orientations are perfectly normal. The page on homosexuality, titled Coming Out, displays a teenage boy in an intimate pose with what appears to be an adult man. This section explains how to have gay sex using a condom, dental dam, and even plastic wrap. And for their viewing pleasure, Planned Parenthood's got a few things for teens to watch.
There's a penis on my body. Awesome!
Being gay is a little like being left-handed.
Any protection?
Yeah, of course.
Amen.
Now this is a clitoral hood. See it?
Happy rap, better ring a rang dong. This is how the penis and vagina get along.
Go penis, go penis.
Twinkie trumpet gherkin.
Captain Winky Slong.
Time to go inside and find out.
Inside the vagina?
Calm down, Pete. You're leaking again.
It's bad enough that Planned Parenthood is conditioning children to engage in sexual activity with the kind of stuff that we've just shown you. But Planned Parenthood of Upper Hudson's youth program, which includes children as young as 13, requires participants to be exposed to sexual deviancy on parade. Literally. Planned Parenthood of Upper Hudson's application form for the STARS program for high school kids states that students as young as 13 are required to attend Capitol Pride. But this isn't just Planned Parenthood of Upper Hudson. As shown in this memo from 1969, Planned Parenthood's national goal is to restructure the family and encourage increased homosexuality as a sick form of population control. And that's why they expose our kids to stuff like this. Is it any wonder that 1 in 4 teenage girls has an STD? All this exposure to sex takes place before graduation from high school. When these kids go to college, they'll be bombarded with sex-themed parties put on by Planned Parenthood Vox groups. Here's a brief look at some of the different ways Planned Parenthood spills its pornographic material to undergrads. Like this poster of a penis monster attacking a naked girl in a condom bubble. Is this image from a Vox party something that Planned Parenthood considers medically accurate? Here's Planned Parenthood doing its part in reducing men and women to sex objects. A party with no pants and free safe sex kits? That just screams date rape. Maybe a Planned Parenthood sex workshop about pleasure, desire, and orgasms is more age appropriate. At least your sons and daughters can enjoy the vulva puppet show and leave with a free sex toy. What Planned Parenthood education booth would be complete without a fisting kit for homosexual college and teenage students? But hey, America can sleep well knowing that its tax money is being put to good use, right? This is what Planned Parenthood is all about. Get the kids addicted to sex so it can sell them birth control. When teens catch a sexually transmitted disease, it sells them testing services. And when a young girl gets pregnant, it sells her an abortion.
The Ontario election, yeah, I know it's a bit boring, but it's next week, and Ontario is a fairly important province. And look, as hard as it is to believe, it's claimed, we're going to find out, that the Liberals intend to try again to implement a sex education curriculum that teaches very young children some quite shocking sexual perversion. And now, please, before you say, oh, he's just a prude, look, I've got 4 kids, believe me, I know how it's done. I'm not, Britain is not a priggish society. It's not about that. It's about kids who still believe in Santa being taught about anal sex, oral sex, masturbation. Anyway. Teresa Pierre is a mother, 4 children, and she is representing the Ontario Catholic Parent Association. Welcome to you.
Oh, thank you.
Now, you're not an extremist. You're just a mom with 4 kids, and I don't think you've been that political in the past. But the curriculum, the Liberals tried to push this through. They did try and push it through. A lot of people said, hold on, this isn't right. They want to do so again if they're elected. Is it really as bad as people say?
I would think so. I think that the general outcry from last time will just be repeated again once it's known.
So what's in it? What's in the curriculum?
Well, the sexual education component of the EIE policy is what we're talking about.
An EI education?
Education and inclusive education.
Inclusive education.
Right.
Okay.
So that's fine and dandy. It's supposed to be combating discrimination based on gender, race, and ability, and that's great.
I think that's a waste of time myself. I think kids are just kids and they're lovely. However, but the sex part of it is?
Well, they would introduce for grade 1s.
So that's 6 years old?
It's about 6 years old. Yeah. The anatomically correct terms for their genitalia. Grade 1. Do you want your kids, coming home and having that conversation with you?
Instead of well, in English, British English, instead of willy, what do they call it here? You can say it, don't worry, it's unused.
The word to use would be penis.
No, but what would you, to your kids, what would you say?
Well, I wouldn't have that discussion with them.
But it's their willy. If they're going to have a wee, it's their willy, isn't it?
Private parts, I think.
Right, so you have to say penis to a 6-year-old.
Correct.
Okay, right.
Grade 3, they would introduce discussions of homosexuality and gender identity.
8 years old.
That's right.
At 8 years old, they're taught about homosexuality and transgender, transsexual.
In a general way, and that
Right.
comes in again in grade 8.
Are many 8-year-olds actually saying, Mummy, Daddy, tell me all about the transgendered people, please? That's not what I experience with my children.
Well, I don't think this is being prompted by the kids. Yeah, I think it's kind of a board initiative, really.
So they're talking about penis, vagina at 6 years old instead of the more childish terms. And these kids, of course, still wait for Santa every year. They're being told about homosexuality, transgender, transsexual.
Oh, it gets better, though.
At 8. Go on.
In grade 6, they're taught about masturbation. Grade 6.
So, again, I'm a foreigner. So grade 6, they are, how old are they, 11?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because, of course, no child ever realized what masturbation was in the history of humanity. You need to be told. And when kids are told, they're not going to say, oh, mustn't go any further with that. Of course, it's going to be the idea of temptation.
Well, they might. You know, we have the internet now. The information goes a lot faster than it did when we were kids.
So they're taught about masturbation at the age of 11. Okay, carry on.
Grade 7, we have anal and oral sex on the menu. Grade 7.
At 12?
Yes, I'm in grade 7.
At 12, they're taught about anal and oral sex?
Yeah, not my kids.
What is the rationale given to why this is happening?
Well, there are a couple of reasons, I suppose. You have the need to conform the sex education curriculum was the immediate reason that McGinty and his advisors got together and put their heads together on that. After that, it was sold to the boards and administrators.
But look, you change something when it's broken. Now, kids are messy, odd, sometimes irritating, ultimately lovely individuals.
Not at all. I'm sorry.
And issues of sexuality have always been, I mean, this caricature of the embarrassed parent talking to their kids. My kids just learnt, and I think it was my wife, I can't really remember who, but anyway, it's wonderful how it happens. It can be a bit embarrassing for everyone concerned, but it all works. We continue to procreate. You know what this is about? It's an agenda. And I think a lot of it is driven by a homosexual agenda. Anal sex. They're trying to say everything is normal. Anything you do, anything you want to do is entirely acceptable, and I disagree with that.
Yeah, there's definitely an agenda contained between the lines there. And what they're really trying to do, I think, is to encourage approval among these kids. And there's a subliminal message in between all of this that they tell, for instance, grade 5 kids, there's a teacher prompt that you want the kids to come away saying, there are personal characteristics that are out of my control, including my gender identity and sexual orientation. Now, that means that the child who is sitting there hearing that, are they going to be able to express any doubts about the biological determinism in that statement?
So, children want to be children want to be dinosaurs. Children want to be dolphins. Children want to be all sorts of things. So if a little boy says, I want to be a girl, or a girl wants to be a boy, that's to be encouraged and affirmed.
Yeah, and taught to them if they had no prior idea of doing that.
What happens if a parent says, I don't actually approve of this, I'd rather my child didn't attend that particular class?
Kathleen Wynne did give a provincial guarantee at the time. In 2008, she gave a guarantee that parents would be able to opt their children out of these classes. Now,
does that still stand?
Well, in the Toronto board, it doesn't. In the Toronto board, parents are not allowed to opt their children out. They are not required to receive any notice that the classes are taking place.
Right.
And so really they've taken parental input into this equation out altogether.
Largest city in the country, Toronto, in the public board, if a parent, the primary educator, the parent is not to be informed if a child is learning about buggery and oral sex and masturbation at the age of 11 years old, 10 years old. If they do find out and object, but they're not... What if they just take the child out of class?
Well, you have to know what's happening before you can take your child out of class.
Right. And if they do find out and they do take the child out of the class, are they reprimanded? Is the child given a detention?
I don't imagine that would happen, no.
But they're not allowed to. I mean, it would be like being absent,
it's just not going to happen, right? Until there's better communication between the boards, as there is, say, in Hamilton.
So a parent is told, We're not telling you. It's your child. You cope, you pay, you look after, you dry the tears, you're there when the pain. But we're going to indoctrinate your kids into this, and we're not going to tell you when we're going to do it.
We know better.
Look, no one should be bullied. I'm not a fool. I know what this is about. We all know what it's about. It's not about kids becoming more comfortable as sexual beings as they develop, and they should as they get 12, 13, 14, and 15.
Well, I'm not saying no information.
No, it should be loads of information.
Yeah,
but
I'm saying that the agenda does not have to be this strong.
If a child is gay, if any person is bullied, whatever their sexuality, colour, size, religion, bullying is wrong. It's not the nature of the victim of the bullying, it's the nature of the bullying.
But the schools have policies to keep their schools safe.
Of course they do.
That's right.
And all children are protected.
Why can't we just rest with the Safe Schools policy and change the content of this
if the Liberals are elected next week, this will be pushed through the provincial parliament?
Kathleen Wynne stated in comments to Extra Magazine that she expected that it would be reintroduced.
Okay, Kathleen Wynne, lesbian, was education minister. I know Kathleen, nice woman.
Good.
She's a very influential cabinet minister, would be in a Liberal government, told Extra, Radical Gay Magazine, that if they win, this will be the curriculum.
That is what I read in the paper.
You know what? I didn't even know if I would bother to vote next week. I think I will now. Thank you so very much indeed.
Oh, please do.
And the advent of the internet, easy access to porn has been a worry for parents. Even children not looking for it can stumble across it. Paul, who's now 24, became addicted to online porn at just 13. It dominated his life.
I knew exactly what I was doing was wrong, and that no average 13, 14-year-old goes in like from school and goes straight onto the computer. I knew exactly what I was doing was wrong.
Paul's case is extreme, but today's report says a significant proportion of children have come across pornography or are accessing it. And it's very different from what today's parents may have seen when they were children.
Years ago, pornography was restricted to places like this. Now those strict controls have gone, and even hardcore porn is readily accessible to children on any device.
Just a few clicks away on any mobile phone, on any tablet, for example, children can find really graphic depictions of extreme and violent sexual acts.
The report says relationship and sex education should be compulsory in all schools and should include debate on the impact of pornography. The Department for Education said that while sex education wasn't compulsory at primary level, children from the age of 5 will be taught how to stay safe online. Rita Chakrabarti, BBC News.
Oh, hi! I'm hanging out with my good friend, Tracy. Sent here to teach us about sex education.
That's right, Spud. I'm from the National Sexuality Administration, and I'm here to teach you everything you need to know about the birds and the bees.
Oh, boy! I have so many questions.
Well, ask away, Spud.
Okay. Let me think. What's gender identity?
Well, this is how a person identifies themselves according to their gender. Most people develop a gender identity that does correspond with their biological sex, but some do not.
Like a gay, lesbian, or transgender person?
Well, slow down, Spud. That's several lessons ahead.
Oh, okay. Well, what's sexual intercourse?
Well, sexual intercourse is when a penis is inserted into a vagina, a mouth, or an anus.
Oh, Tracy, my friend's mommy got an abortion the other day because she had sexual intercourse. What is an abortion?
An abortion is a medical intervention that ends a pregnancy. If your friend's mommy had used birth control, she could have prevented the abortion.
Right. Well, that makes sense. Okay, kids. Next week, we will discuss the different kinds of birth control that prevent pregnancy and disease. Yay! Please play video file 33. Practicing safe.
I remember him using this in his campaign against me, saying Barack Obama supports teaching sex education to kindergartners. And, you know, which I didn't know what to tell him. But it's the right thing to do.